with us?
What? I just got on. What's up?
Okay, no, just making sure we're live streaming now, so I guess we're getting
Okay.
started. Just making sure you're okay for us to get started. So, all right. Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting, the Tuesday, January 25th meeting of the Regulations Review Committee to order. I'd like to start by asking my co-chair, Representative Claire DeStitria, if she has any comments.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. With that, let's move on to today's agenda. The first regulation is Regulation 2021-022, Department of Consumer Protection, Self-Pour Automated Systems. The recommendation, LCO recommendation, is approval in whole with technical corrections. I would entertain a motion to approve in whole with technical corrections.
Senator, a quick question, if I can just do a quorum call?
I apologize. Yeah, thank you, Madam Clerk. Yeah, let's do a quorum call.
All right, so for purposes of a quorum, if you can just let me know if you're present. Representative Arnone.
Here.
Representative Arnone is present. Representative Carpino.
Here.
Representative Carpino is present. Representative Godfrey.
Here.
Representative Godfrey is present. Senator Hartley. Senator Kelly.
Here.
Senator Kelly is present. Senator Kissel.
Here. Good morning, everyone.
Senator Kissel is present. Representative Claire DeStitria.
Here. Good morning.
Representative Claire DeStitria is present. Senator Maroney.
Morning, present.
Senator Maroney is present. Representative McGorty.
Present.
Representative McGorty is present. Senator Minor.
Here.
Senator Minor is present. Senator Austin.
Senator Austin is here.
Senator Austin is present. Representative Vitigliano.
Here.
Representative Vitigliano is present. Representative Ryan.
Here.
Representative Ryan and Representative Welander is not currently present. All right, well, all set. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we had discussed I was supposed to do that ahead of time. So I obviously am having short-term memory issues today. So thank you for that reminder. So
Prevagen.
with that, I would entertain a motion for approval in whole with technical corrections for Regulation 2021-022, Department of Consumer Protection, Self-Pour Automated Systems.
So moved. Senator Austin.
Moved by Senator Austin. Is there a second?
Second, Bob Godfrey.
Seconded by Representative Godfrey. Are there any discussions? Are there any questions or is there any discussion on this? Okay. Hearing no discussion, we're going to take all the votes by roll today. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sorry, I was muted. Representative Welander just joined. So Representative Welander, if I could just, for forum purposes, if you just let me know if you're present.
And I apologize for being a few minutes late. Thank you.
Representative Welander is present. Okay, so I'm going to do the roll call vote for Regulation 2021-22, Self-Pour Automated Systems from the Department of Consumer Protection. Senator Maroney.
Yes.
And I should say the motion is to approve in whole with technical corrections. Representative Claire DeStitria.
Yes.
Representative Claire DeStitria votes yes. Senator Kissel.
Yes.
Senator Kissel votes yes. Representative Arnone.
Representative Arnone, yes.
Representative Arnone votes yes. Representative Carpino.
Yes.
Representative Carpino votes yes. Representative Godfrey.
Godfrey votes yes.
Representative Godfrey votes yes. Senator Hartley. Senator Kelly.
Kelly votes yes.
Senator Kelly votes yes. Representative McGorty.
Yes.
Representative McGorty votes yes. Senator Minor.
Yes.
Senator Minor votes yes. Senator Austin.
Senator Austin votes in the affirmative.
Senator Austin votes yes. Representative Vitigliano.
Yes.
Representative Vitigliano votes yes. Representative Ryan.
Votes yes.
Representative Ryan votes yes. And Representative Welander.
Yes.
Representative Welander votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item is Regulation 2021-023, Department of Consumer Protection Shared Pharmacy Services. The LCO recommendation is approval in whole with technical corrections. I would entertain a motion for approval of this regulation in whole with technical corrections.
So moved, Senator Austin.
Second, Rep. Retigliano.
Okay, moved by Senator Austin and seconded by Representative Retigliano. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Roll call vote on 2021-23. The motion is to approve in whole with technical corrections. Senator Maroney.
Senator Maroney votes in the affirmative.
Votes yes. Representative Claire DeCitria.
Representative Claire DeCitria votes yes.
Senator Kissel.
Senator Kissel votes yes.
Representative Arnone.
Representative Arnone votes yes.
Representative Carpino.
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Representative Godfrey.
Godfrey votes yes.
Senator Hartley. Senator Kelly.
Senator Kelly votes yes.
Representative McGorty.
Yes.
Representative McGorty votes yes. Senator Minor.
Yes.
Senator Austin.
Senator Austin votes in the affirmative.
Representative Retigliano.
Yes.
Representative Ryan.
Representative Ryan votes yes.
And Representative Wheelander.
Representative Wheelander votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to pass the next item and come back to it. So we're going to move on to the resubmittal from the Department of Labor. So Regulation 2021-021A, Department of Labor, Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Appeal Procedures. The LCO recommendation is approval in whole with technical corrections and substitute pages. I would entertain a motion to approve this regulation in whole with technical corrections and substitute pages.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Bob Godfrey.
Thank
And I'll
you.
second it.
Okay, moved by Representative Godfrey, seconded by Representative Ryan. Is there any discussion or questions? I believe we do have representatives from the Department of Labor on. Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
A roll call vote on 2021-21A. The motion is to approve in whole with technical corrections and substitute pages. Senator Maroney.
Senator Maroney votes yes.
Representative Claire DeCitria.
Representative Claire DeCitria votes yes.
Senator Kissel.
Senator Kissel votes yes.
Representative Arnone.
Representative Arnone votes yes.
Representative Carpino.
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Representative Godfrey.
Godfrey votes yes.
Senator Kelly.
Kelly votes yes.
Representative McGorty.
Representative McGorty, yes.
Senator Minor.
Minor votes yes.
Senator Austin.
Senator Austin votes in the affirmative.
Representative Retigliano.
Yes.
Representative Ryan.
Representative Ryan votes yes.
And Representative Wheelander.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And so now we will come back to Regulation 2021-024, Department of Consumer Protection, Online Casino Gaming, Retail and Online Sports. The LCO recommendation is approval in whole with technical corrections and substitute pages. I would entertain a motion to approve in whole with technical corrections and substitute pages.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Representative Carpino, seconded by Representative Godfrey. We have Department of Consumer Protection on to answer questions. So we're going to move to discussion, and I am going to start. If we could have, is Commissioner Siegel on?
Yes, good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, Commissioner Siegel. I would like to ask a few questions, then we'll open it up to the members to ask some questions as well. So again, these regulations are after the emergency regulations that we had voted on back in August. So I was wondering if you could explain any changes, the changes, if any, from the emergency regulations.
Yeah, there's a fair number of changes based on either feedback as after the soft launch and sort of things we were experiencing in the industry, and then also based on input from the entities in the market and through the public comment period on these regulations. So, throughout the definitions, we made a number of clarifications. For example, complementaries, we excluded and clarified it didn't include things like food or drinks at some of the retail outlets. We did a few other things. We clarified what prizes were. A big one was we added a definition for a physical receipt to address some issues from CLC there. We added, I'm going to try to hit the bigger ones. We allowed for an expiration of physical receipts, which is consistent with how lottery tickets can expire. We did include a number of, and I know this has come up before, our original emergency regulations had some carve out for fantasy contests, and we added in some more during this, including, we were asked to allow for the next runner up, for example, to get the prizes as opposed to the normal process where prizes go into an account the state would sort of handle differently. But here, the second runner up would get the prize in a fantasy contest if the winner ends up being excluded. We did some other cleanup to avoid duplication with lottery and Keno regs that already exist. We put in some additional consumer protections that we were hearing from other states were issues, for example, requiring more clarification as to all the terms around complementaries. And those are sort of the, hey, you get $100 free to start your gaming, but sometimes it required you to place a certain number of bets or a certain amount of wagering. We want to make sure consumers had that information. Another sort of really big one we did was voiding wagers. They needed permission from us to cancel or avoid any wagers, and we realized as the market launched and played out that there are certain situations where really we don't need to pre-approve. The game gets canceled, the location changes, something significant happens where the expectations of the patron placing the bet have changed so significantly that wager should be canceled. And so we added a whole section on that.
Okay, thank you. Now, you also submitted substitute pages. So I was wondering if you could explain some of the changes that were made and maybe some reasoning behind the changes in the substitute pages.
Yeah, a lot of those were based, some of them were feedback from LCO. They presented us, their initial recommendation was there were some substantive corrections that needed to be made. So we made those. Then in addition, we had some follow-up with CLC on some of the things we initially didn't accept from them. We were able to come up with some compromise language there. So the definition, for example, of a house-banked internet game was one of the substitute pages. We removed the description. We added a definition for youth athletics. Those were for in response to feedback from LCO. One of the changes we added after conversations with lottery is we had some requirements that printed receipts. If we were going to allow them to expire, we wanted some language making sure people knew. They had already had a bunch of these receipts in stock, which maybe don't perfectly match up with what the regs would require. So we're going to allow them to use those up before then coming up with receipts consistent with that. The problem gaming message, it's something we would have allowed, but we made it even clearer in our regulations that can be in other languages as well. It doesn't have to be English. So those were the types of things. I don't necessarily remember everyone, but if there's you ask me about it, I can discuss our thoughts.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, when we did pass the emergency regulations, I know we had a number of questions for you back then, and a lot of them centered around, I believe, payment methods There were concerns around, I think it was joint accounts, and then the funding of accounts in terms of allowing for the funding with Venmo or PayPal. And I believe also Lottery had brought up an issue in regards to the use of gift cards for funding an account. Can you talk a little bit about those issues?
Yeah, those, we didn't make changes there. We really felt like the statute itself gave some pretty specific guidance as to sort of one credit card, one debit card. So we weren't going to allow payment methods, and we continue to not allow payment methods that would circumvent that statutory requirement. And so I know there was a balance. Some people wanted us to make it a bit harder, and others wanted us to make it easier for people to do money. We felt in the emergency regs and continue to believe we sort of struck an appropriate balance based on the statutory language.
So your belief is this, you're limited by the statutory language to just one credit card to fund an account, is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. No, those are my questions. Thank you very much. I don't know if any of the other members have questions for the commissioner.
I have a couple questions, Mr. Chair. I have my hand up.
Okay.
Let me know
Thank you, Senator Austin. Please proceed.
So first, just so you know, I have another meeting going on at the same time, so that's in the background, and I apologize for that. But I did get off of a third meeting, so you only have one in the background. Commissioner, yesterday the Public Safety Committee held an informational forum on gambling, and this is something that I've been aware of for a while now, is the fantasy games, which is an interstate versus an intrastate platform. And my understanding is that, and first I'd like to sort of historically say that we had passed a bill in either 2016 or 2017 relative to fantasy games, separately, keeping it separate from other platforms that we were discussing. And so I thought that that was always our intention, was to keep the fantasy game platform separately because it was dealing with other states, not dealing with just Connecticut. And I appreciate the changes that you made relative to the components of the intrastate issues, but I'm a little concerned that we are sort of not allowing different regulations for the interstate platform of fantasy. My concern is that they will not be able to participate in Connecticut. And I don't know, I know many people who participate in fantasy games. And my understanding is that there are two specific issues. One is that there's a half an hour time frame where they have to back out of the system. But a lot of times they're online developing their teams. And so that is not the gaming component of this. Can you talk a little bit about the fantasy games, and if there was going to be a change at all, it would have to be done legislatively? I believe that you think that you comply with the rules governing fantasy sports by what you perceive as the intention of the bill. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great. And my other meeting just ended, so you won't be listening to that. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not going to get saved by another meeting.
No.
No, I'm happy to discuss the fantasy contest. I know it was discussed a lot yesterday at the forum. So sort of starting kind of with the landscape in the country, it is treated differently across different states. So even though it is interstate, there's some that go so far as to treat it as a game of skill and really don't regulate it very much at all. Then there are ones that treat it as Connecticut does, as gaming, and have fairly robust regulations. Michigan, for example, is a state that regulates it more robustly and is one we look to a lot. And the statute, notwithstanding the 2017 bill, which required sort of agreement with the tribes, the bill that eventually passed rolled fantasy contests into the definition of an internet game. And throughout that bill, it talks about internet games in a specific way. And therefore, with fantasy contests being part of that definition, we understand that to sort of reflect the legislative intent in the deal that was struck, that fantasy contests would be treated fairly similarly to that. Also, kind of want to point out, although it's different and it does have that different component to it, you continue to have, people are setting up their patron accounts with some sensitive information. They're connecting their bank account. And fantasy contests are not this situation where maybe people are used to, where you create a team for the football season, and then at the end, you and your friends like see who had the better team. There's daily fantasy contests. And so you can be placing bets daily or throughout the day in these games. So it is a more robust type of gaming than maybe people traditionally think of when they think fantasy sports. So with that being said, we did look for ways to do some carve outs, and we continue to encourage, and they have been, are in conversations with the operators to see if some of the carve outs may solve some of the problems we're looking at. But some examples, and we wanted to really stay true to the statute and then see where can we make some carve outs without doing an injustice to the law and the policy balance that was struck. And so there's things we didn't require the soft launch requirement. We did have some modifications on how we're handling geolocation to take account of how other states are doing that. We allow, because of some of the time limit things you talked about, a fantasy operator can come to us and request an exemption for how patrons impose self-imposed time limits, since it doesn't really match up with how fantasy contests work. We allow for different.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'll just switch to a big
I just
one.
want to, can you elaborate on that, please?
So I think there's two different things that have been flagged. So I think probably I should have started, really the big thing we did to accommodate fantasy contests is so Section 13 creates the platform requirements, and it carves out fantasy contests. And then there's a Section 14. It has entirely.
I'm having a hard time. I don't know if it's my computer.
Oh, I'll try to move closer to my speaker. So we created two separate sections for the wagering platform. One that applies to the other forms of online gaming and one for fantasy contests. So I think some of the concerns people are raising, if they do a comparison of Section 13 and 14, and Section 14 is what applies to fantasy contests, it does have a lot of differences, and it was really done to address the uniqueness of that type of gaming. And so it doesn't have, for example, that 15-minute logout requirement. It doesn't have the same multi-factor authentication requirement.
So I just am, because I don't know whether it's my computer or yours. So I was hearing about every other word in some cases. If I could go back to the two different issues. One, relative to the login, logout time, are you saying that there is an ability for them to get an exemption on the half-hour time frame for fantasy games?
Yeah, what they need to do is look at, I think sometimes the operators were conflating Section 13, which are the platform requirements for the other forms of gaming, and then there's Section 15, which applies 14, sorry, which applies only to fantasy contests. And so I think that concern and some of the others may be addressed if they could, want to talk to us, and we can talk through where we have those differences there. And we have begun those conversations.
Did the conversations that you were having with the two vendors, I believe it's just DraftKings and FanDuel that are allowed to do this under the master licensing agreements that the two tribal nations have. You're saying that when did those conversations happen with them? Are you saying that they have the ability to exempt themselves from that time frame? Number one.
Yeah, so the timeout requirement is not part of the fantasy contest platform thing.
Okay.
And that's already kind of built into section 14. I think some of the concerns were, sometimes it's hard to pick up on that nuance because you're looking for words that are missing. And it is kind of clearly outlined in section 13. So, the public comments we got on fantasy contests during the sort of comment period for these regulations really asked for a wholesale carve out of fantasy contests in a pretty significant way, where it would be, there'd be pretty dramatic deregulation of that. And we didn't think that was something we could do consistent with the statute and its definition of internet games. But some of the kind of, once we started kind of delving into where the specific pain points, I think some of those are covered. And, we want to continue having conversations with them. And if they start looking at that language and we can point stuff out to them, that may help.
Again, I'm not trying to be obtuse, but I'm trying to figure out exactly if I was coming into the fantasy gaming world as a user of it or as a vendor of it, is that section that says that they have that half an hour and they have to log out, is there a section that allows them to opt out of that half an hour? I just want to, is that a yes?
It's not a requirement. So it's not that there's an opt-in or opt-out. It simply is not required in that section 14.
So for fantasy games, they can be on as long as they need to build up their teams, however that may be.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to have as an answer. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then,
Just
Are
wanted
there-
a quick follow-up if I could, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you. Representative Vitigliano?
Thank you, sir. Is it the user that asks for an exemption to the log out, or is it the fantasy provider that asks for an exemption from the log out?
It's you don't need to ask for an exemption. That requirement, because of how fantasy contests are different, is simply not there in section 14.
So if somebody's inactive and they leave their fantasy game open on a computer and they haven't done anything, this is inactivity for a half an hour, there's not a log out provision where the company's required to log them out?
The company can, but I don't believe it is mandated.
And that doesn't appear anywhere statutorial. That was a regulation decision.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Let's go.
I'll vote on 2021-20-24. The motion is to approve in whole with technical corrections in substitute pages. Senator Maroney,
Senator Maroney votes yes.
Representative Claire DeCitria,
Representative Claire DeCitria votes yes.
Senator Kissel,
Senator Kissel votes yes.
Representative Arnone,
Representative Arnone votes yes.
Representative Carpino,
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Representative Godfrey,
Representative Godfrey votes yes.
Senator Hartley, Senator Kelly,
Kelly votes yes.
Representative McGorty,
Representative McGorty, yes.
Senator Minor,
Senator Minor votes no.
Senator Austin,
Senator Austin votes yes with clarifications that I received. Thank you.
Representative Vitigliano,
Vitigliano votes no.
Representative Ryan,
Representative Ryan votes yes.
and Representative Welander.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing no other business on our agenda, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I'll
moved.
move. Second.
Okay, motion was moved and seconded, so we are adjourned.